Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this AMI webinar. I'm Lucy Harper, the Chief Exec of AMI. Now, in 2022, when we launched our new strategy and transformed the organisation from the Society for Applied Microbiology to Applied Microbiology International, it was natural for us to set one of our values as inclusivity. And it was clear to me that we needed to make absolutely certain that we had created an environment that engendered a sense of belonging. Having diversity at the core of AMI's work is something we've been aspiring to for decades, since we established our Early Career Scientists Committee and their research symposium. The importance of listening to diverse voices to shape an organisation has been recognised and is priority for many across the learned society sector. As one of the senior leads on diversity for AMI, I feel incredibly privileged to be introducing this webinar, where we'll hear from a number of voices as we connect, inspire, and advocate for LGBTQIA+ researchers in microbiology. So now I will pass on to Dr. Claire Taylor, who will introduce the rest of our hosts for today's webinar, and she'll be chairing for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucy. Hello, everybody, and welcome. So my name is Claire Taylor. I'm a senior lecturer in microbiology from Edinburgh Napier University, and I have the absolute pleasure of chairing today's webinar. I'm really looking forward to hearing from all of our panelists today. I'd also like to introduce Dr. Loki Cullen, who is AMI's Head of Policy, Community and Scientific Advancement. Hello, Loki, give us a wave. And also really happy to introduce Drew Sinclair, who's joining us today as our graphic harvester. Give us a wave, Drew, thank you. Drew is going to be capturing some key moments visually throughout the session today, and I'll hand over to Drew for a couple of minutes just to explain what it is you're going to be doing, Drew.
Okay, good afternoon all. Yes, so I'm a graphic designer and graphic illustrator. So what I'll be doing today is capturing, I guess, the essence of the conversations that will be happening today. So I have a large piece of paper on my wall. I'm going to be drawing and sketching things and just capturing key points. So yeah. So hopefully at the end of today, I'll be able to show you what I've created, but then hope to finish the piece later on in the week.
Great, thank you, Joe. That's really exciting. I can't wait to see what you produce. Right, so let's not waste time. Let's get straight into things, and let's move on to our first panel. And we'll follow that panel with a Q&A session. So you can ask questions using the Q&A function in Zoom. So please feel free to pop your questions in as they come up, and we'll get to those after we've heard from our first panel. So our first panel, we'll hear a few minutes from each person, and well, you're not here to hear from me, we're here to hear from them. So I'm going to kick us off straight away and introduce our first speaker, Rebe. Over to you.
Hi everyone, and first of all, thank you so much to AMI for organising this. I think it's really important to bring queer microbiologists together to have these conversations. So just to introduce myself, I am a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Liverpool, and I am a virologist and bioinformatician. So I've put some pictures on here just to sort of utilise the 3 minutes I have to introduce myself. So I mainly study coronaviruses and use RNA sequencing to answer questions about viral evolution and the host response. But actually, as a queer person, the reason I got into virology was mainly rooted into actually what my mum's vocation was, which was lots of care towards people living with HIV. So when I was younger, we had lots of conversations about stigma and how viruses were sort of perceived socially. So I grew up with this sort of conversation, and I was also really interested in biology, and I was almost taken aback by the fact that viruses do not care what you are, what you do. And yeah, our society does. So that kind of started this trajectory for me in my career. And really that's kind of the root of the things that I'm interested in research is looking at how communities sort of perceive viruses, and we saw that as well with the COVID-19 pandemic, had lots of stigma. But one of the things that I've really enjoyed about being out and queer within the microbiology space is actually meeting other queer microbiologists. And I've been very fortunate to be involved in the working queer and micro working group, who I've got co-members on the webinar with me today, Rowan and Bruno. And this is an initiative that was started just to bring a social space in our conferences, so that we could bring queer microbiologists together. And actually one of the most interesting
Oh, looks like we lost Ruby in mid-flow there. I'm not sure what's happened. Are you back?
But I'm back. I don't know what happened, but what I was going to say is one of the most interesting things that I found about when we did this bringing of people together at this conference was that actually queer people in microbiology felt like they didn't necessarily have role models. So again, that reiterates why things like this are so important, so that we can meet and share experiences with each other. And then finally, if I've still got enough time, as someone who's queer, I'm also a photographer. So I actually do a lot of photography for cabaret shows in Liverpool, which is amazing. But this has put me in close network with queer artists that use microbiology to communicate science and stuff like that. So I think my time is probably up. So please ask me questions about this relationship that I have made locally. Thank you. And sorry that I got booted off as well. I don't know what happened.
Oh, no problem at all. That was our first exciting moment of the webinar. So thank you very much, Ruby. So next, I'd like to invite our next panelist, Dukas.
So good afternoon, everyone. I'm really happy to be with you. My name is Dukas. And first of all, I would like to thank, of course, the organizers and Applied Microbiology International for this wonderful initiative. I've actually met some of the organizers a couple of years ago, quite a bit of time ago, I guess, in FEMS, where we had Community Corner, and this is where our connection began. It was actually first time for me to speak out publicly about my identity at that meeting. So I come from Lithuania originally, where I began my studies. And at the university time was the time, I guess, when I started being interested in science. And I think delving into scientific questions kind of helped me find my way and helped me to move on in my transition as well. I left my country, where it is impossible to pursue gender reassignment. I left to Belgium for thesis, first of all, rather than for the transition. But a very good healthcare and very good environment that helped me. And this is where I could finally proceed. And then 2016, so midway in my PhD, I had to undertake the legal action against my country in order to change my documents. And actually, I changed them at the end of my PhD. I had to make a decision to start publishing under my chosen name during that time. Then I moved on to postdoc, and then about 4 years after, I was recruited back to the same university, now as a professor and as a leader of a small team, which currently consists of 2 postdocs, 2 PhD students, a couple of master students. I think I represent transgender people that are not entirely open, not entirely visible. It's sort of a choice, not putting my personal life forward, sort of security cocoon to protect myself against uncomfortable questions. But there's also drawbacks of this kind of behavior. It's first of all, of course, lack of visibility, lack of representation, lack of what the previous person said as being a role model for others. But I'm still, I guess, trying to find that balance between being a representative of a community, especially throughout the academic career, and being at ease with myself. But I have to say, I guess, as a conclusion to my short presentation, is that finding yourself, finding your way in society as a non-binary person is not maybe something which is so much different as finding your researcher identity when you move on to your academic career, especially when you try to establish as an independent researcher. And I think that the both can inspire each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Dukas. And after this, it's really great to see you again, because we obviously met at the FEMS Congress. Okay, so next I would like to invite our next panelist, Rowan.
Thank you very much for the introduction. So I'm a PhD student at Cardiff University. My research journey has been a bit shorter, so I've only just really started getting established. I actually started in toxicology, specifically looking at toxicological impact on development during my university first degree. However, the SARS-CoV-2 pandemic hit, and I suddenly found that I had a very non-traditional university life in lockdown, trying to get my first degree. It was at this point that I reached out to my lecturers, etc., and I actually got involved in viruses and bioinformatics, which led on to my PhD applications where I wanted to study animal viruses, but ended up in clinical research. I think this is probably my key part of my research story, is that I've had my research journey has been quite disjointed due to the global situation, and I've ended up falling into virology and indeed microbiology. I think whilst I was at university, I struggled in that whilst there was no anti-trans sentiment, I had my research environment was not necessarily very accepting. I felt very in a situation where I couldn't come out to people. And I think going on to my PhD, one of the things I prioritized was finding a lab group, Humphrey's lab, where I actually felt accepted. And I think that's something that I'm always going to take forward into my future career, that I really want to find groups where I feel at home. For example, our current group has multiple trans people, and it's really nice to have a nice community. I'm also very interested in bioinformatics, and that comes out of the pandemic. So having to suddenly stop all my laboratory work, my wet laboratory, and move into dry laboratory has been quite a challenge and quite interesting to me, and something that I really want to pursue in the future. And that's not to say I want to leave the wet laboratory entirely. So I'm showing a couple of figures there, one wet lab and one dry lab. And I think that's really integral to my to being a researcher to me. As Reby said, I joined the Queer and Microbiology Working Group at the Microbiology Society, and I think I'm very involved in Microbiology Society, so I am part of their members panel, soon to be renamed to the EDI panel, and I'm part of the early career virology division representative. So I think, to me, giving back to the community that supported me when I've not had such a stable research journey so far, and has supported me in my queer identity, is really important. And I'm just so glad to be working with Bruno and Reby in the future on future projects such as this. I think it just leads me to say sort of my advice and what's come out of my research journey is to sort of enjoy where you're at and move forward and just roll the dice sometimes and see where it takes you, but also how important it is to find these intersectional spaces where you can feel at home. I think that's my presentation done. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Rowan. I'm fascinated by your slide. Might have to ask you about that later.
Thank you.
Okay, and let me introduce the final panelist in this section, and that's Nicholas. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on this panel. Once again, my name is Nicholas Farmer. My pronouns are they, he. Now, my talk is going to be a little bit different from everyone else's because I really am at the start of my journey. I have yet to even complete my PhD. Currently, I work for the Medical Research Council, which is part of UK Research and Innovation, and I am their race equality lead. And I'm based at the Laboratory of Molecular Biology in Cambridge. My responsibilities include working on positive action initiatives to enhance the chances of ethnic minority scientists across the academic pipeline. And I also project manage MRC's Black in Biomedical Advisory Group. Working for a funder, I find it really rewarding to be able to make high-level decisions that will positively impact future generations of researchers. So in order to do my job correctly, I must be able to bring my authentic self in all situations. And I'm very glad that I have a supportive line manager to do so. We worked on creating a blog page for our LGBTQ+ colleagues to write about their experiences on our internal internet pages. I wrote a piece on the intersectionality of being Black and transgender. And I'm very proud of my identities and feel like they have given me a unique experience and the perspective that helps me to do my job. However, I do still face barriers and challenges like access to affordable gender-affirming healthcare, transphobia and discrimination from the Black community, and possible racism in some circumstances. Due to these challenges, I think I can be hyper-vigilant in certain circumstances, and I have my guard up when I meet new people in professional environments. But once that blog came out, I had a couple of colleagues that told me that they had read the blog post, and it kind of opened up dialogue to talk more about experiences of our LGBTQ+ colleagues. I've not been in the job long, and so to receive such positive feedback really reassured me that this is a place that I can feel comfortable to be myself. After that experience, me and my boss decided that we were going to create a group to march at Cambridge Pride. So we sent a call out to all of my colleagues to sign up, and we were really overwhelmed by the amount of people who wanted to come with us. We booked multiple craft sessions at lunchtime over the course of 2 weeks for people to come and decorate lab coats. So we decorated the lab coats in all sorts of rainbow colors with glitter, and it was just a great way to get people talking to one another. People who worked in different lab divisions and don't usually get to socialize were able to come together, talk about their work, also just talk about their lab coat designs and generally socialize. It felt as though we were really bringing people together. After the next coming weeks, people were actively talking more about LGBT issues at work, and it felt like there was a shift in attitudes towards what is acceptable to talk about at work. And it's definitely a step in the right direction, and I hope that we can cultivate more moments like this for our scientists at LMB. And you can see us all there on the slide, enjoying. So overall, I would say that my experience so far has been really positive, and I appreciate the conversations that I've had with certain colleagues wishing to be better allies or just to learn. And it's not always up to the minoritized group to teach, but I am very much happy to do it if it comes from a good place of faith. And I hope that wherever I end up next in my career, I'm able to continue my authentic self, as I know that it helps me to do my job as best as I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas. I think I need one of those colourful lab coats. My lab coat's far too boring. So thanks to everybody for sharing your stories there in our first panel session. I think one thing that unites us all is, just the desire to be ourselves and to be able to be in a space where everybody can be themselves and be comfortable to be themselves. So thank you very much for sharing your stories and for being here as well. So we're going to move on to the first Q&A part, and I'd just like to invite folks to pop your questions in the Q&A section. But to get us started, I think Lucky's got a good question to kick us off. Over to you, Lucky.
Claire, I think I've got too many. I have 3 noted down, so I don't want to be greedy. But just picking up on your last point, Nick, what advice would you give someone trying to build a more inclusive environment, whether that be at work or in their own lab?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that when it comes to building an inclusive environment, it's mostly also about making sure that you are trying your best to be the best ally you can be in all situations. And so having conversations about possible things that may be going on in the world, positive things, and bringing them up, or if there is a, for example, like LGBT History Month, or for example, what we're celebrating for this event, asking people in the lab, actually, would you want to do something for this? Should we celebrate this? Maybe we could ask other people in the lab to do so. And for your institutions, you may have equality, diversity, inclusion individuals or champions, and it might be a great opportunity to speak to them to see whether they could be doing more to bring people together and bring people and community. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got go on, Dukas, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, I had a question to Rowan. I was particularly catched by your phrase talking about safe labs, and it's also true in my case because I ended up or chose diversity-friendly labs, and for example, in my postdoc, my boss is openly gay, so it's kind of through personal links that I knew that it was a safe lab, but now that this kind of representation is also in my hands since I have a lab. I was wondering, what do you think we could do to make it visible and clear that the lab is friendly?
I think sort of because obviously it's very different to go out of your way and attract that way. But I think particularly when interviewing and you're taking people on tours, introducing them to people in the lab and having people, if they're comfortable, be visible, because then it's that very personal interaction that makes people feel at home, and it's very much after interviews, taking people around is a really positive way of doing that. I think also it's about celebrating the diversity of people in your lab if they're comfortable. And making sure that they feel comfortable in being visible. I think it's rather a catch-22 that when you, I think looking at labs, the more diversity you have, the more diversity you attract. And I think not just focusing on one thing like LGBT, but also celebrating a whole range and having that intersection approach is really important.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Dukas. We've got a few questions coming in from the Q&A, so let's get to those. So first question here is, and this is to any of you, what was the biggest challenge you faced through your education? So who wants to kick us off with an answer? Go on, Dukas.
I think that the biggest challenge, at least to me, was to balance the openness about my identity and I don't know, the judgment, the potential judgment from other people. Before the transition, it was probably just going on with the name that wasn't changed. And that was clearly the biggest challenge. But I will profit from this moment to say that I'm really happy that, for example, in our university, we have now the possibility to enroll with a chosen name. And this enrollment includes having an email and all of the credentials under your chosen name, and being called in the courses, and also receiving during the diploma event of receiving a diploma, you're called by your chosen name. I think this is a great initiative, which certainly makes it easier for transgender people.
Thanks, Dukas. And I think, I can't even begin to imagine not being able to, be referred to by your chosen name. I mean, it's just, can't get my head around that, to be honest. Right. Oh, the questions are flooding in. So let's move on to the next one. Here's a good one. What do you think is the major challenge for non-binary people along their academic career? I can see the cogs are whirring. Who's gonna go on? I can see that you were.
I'll be brave. To speak from my personal experience, I think the main challenge I've had as a non-binary person is the lack of representation and the lack of role models. It took me a long time to find someone that I could look up to, a non-binary person I could look up to as a role model. And I think role models are important, actually, and having something to aspire to. I'm not saying that's the only challenge. I think there's certainly more logistical ones, but I think that's a really important one to me.
Thanks, Ryan. Okay, here's another question, and a brave question, I think. So the question is, I don't know if I squarely sit in the LGBTQIA+ community yet or not. How can I engage while still figuring myself out so that I don't feel like an imposter? So thank you for that question. Ruby.
Yeah, I think it's a really brave question. So thank you for sharing that. But what I will say is that all people are welcome, and you'll find that a lot of queer communities actually prefer the overarching term queer, because they just want you to be there, and if you've got the same sort of ethos, then be there. So from the microbiologist perspective, I guess if you have working groups like there is in the Microbiology Society, get involved. Of course, you'd be welcome in that kind of thing. And I would like to say it's probably the same for others. So there's nothing wrong for not knowing where you sit at this moment in time, but just come as you are and be you. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely spot on. Absolutely spot on. Thanks, Ruby. Dukas, we've got a question specifically for you, if you don't mind. Do you think that shielding yourself from sharing personal experiences or details about your personal life has impacted your career, or could potentially impact the careers of others?
I had a lot of moments where I hesitated putting some of the details in my CV or not putting them, especially at the beginning of my career, where I still had a few papers with my dead name, and then I had new papers with my new name, which would make it clear that there was something that happened, especially for people that are coming from my region and that know how Lithuanian names and surnames work. I think that shielding myself was probably also a choice of several very uncomfortable situations where I was outed publicly, and that I think kind of led me to that corner where I don't say, and I do this, don't ask, don't tell. But at the same time, at certain moments, I take this card out, especially when there are discussions about transgender people and some people go too far. Then I would take them into an office and I would tell them, but I'm one of them. And that usually works very well because people, they have this shock, but it usually turns out positive because people then suddenly see that their image of what are transgender people can be completely wrong. So in that sense, but that's not, I think I'm not really answering the question because I don't know if it's totally related to my success in career or lack of success in career. That is very difficult to judge, whether being more open at certain moments would have been positive, or whether I have avoided some judgment which would have put me down. Unfortunately, we cannot have a control for this.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Dukas. And well, thanks to everybody for your answers to these questions. I think these are all challenge. The challenge is there, isn't it? It's something that we all face every day, and how you respond on any given day can depend on so many different things. So thanks everybody for being here and sharing these parts of yourself. We do have a few more questions, but I am going to just pause those for now because we will have a more questions later on with everybody. So I'm just going to I'm not ignoring those questions, folks. We'll come back to them later because I'm just going to move us on now to our next panel. So we're going to change focus slightly to advocacy and networks. And I'd now like to invite our first panelist in this section to speak, and that is Dottie, who's joining us all the way from San Diego. Welcome, Dottie.
Hi, good morning, everyone. It's so nice to be here. Wow, the first half has just been really inspiring. A really big part of why I have this interest is actually because the school that I went to, which this is very, very rare, but the school that I went to was actually like primarily queer folks, which was a blessing. And so it was a community that I have always felt very safe with. They've always really tried to just make me feel like what I do is important and how I am, who I am is just enough. And so that really led to me watching a lot of my friends begin to transition and have a lot of questions about what transitioning and beginning to take hormone therapies would do to their bodies. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of research. This is a massive research gap. And so a lot of the first part of my career, I'm actually in AMI's President's Lab, Jack Gilbert. So that's part of how I have the connect. I got to meet Lucky last year. And so I was really, really excited to try to figure out how to align my research interests, which is the microbiome, and figuring out how to study host microbe interactions with how I could help my folks who were transitioning and really not sure how the transitions were changing them at the sort of granular level. And so some of the research that I've been trying to do over the last few years has been trying to understand how hormone replacement therapies influence the vaginal environment of gender diverse folks. As many people know, many gender diverse folks, while transitioning, can elect to take hormone therapies. for lots of reasons. But also there's not a lot of research about what that actually does to the body. And so the vaginal environment is a very unique environment because it's very, very hormone driven. A lot of the changes that we see over time are related to estrogen levels directly. However, what's interesting is that when folks start T, they don't lose estrogen, but a lot of folks report having vaginal atrophy. So I was really interested in this from a mechanistic standpoint. You can kind of see at the pre-puberty level, you have sort of a thin vaginal epithelium, very low microbial diversity. But as you move through the premenopausal and perimenopausal stages, you start to get a thicker vaginal epithelium. You start to get the more sort of classic lactobacillus dominated vaginal environment. And as you lose that estrogen during postmenopause, you start to have a change in the microbiome. There's only been about, I think, 2 or 3 studies now, not more than 5, that have actually tried to understand what happens in the context of transgender men and gender diverse folks with vaginas. And so it's a very, very new area. All we know right now is that the diversity is much different from what we see in cis women. There's also the main therapy that is recommended is local estrogen therapy. But even though that's what's clinically recommended, because of the sort of similarities to what we see in vaginal atrophy in postmenopausal women, there's actually no studies that quantify why or how it's effective, or even how it impacts the microbiome. So these are some of the questions that are going on in the field right now. One group that's answering them is Gabby McPherson. So McPherson et al. Has a really lovely paper on the vaginal environment in trans folks and folks that are on T. So definitely encourage you to look up that research, and also encourage you to do that research if you have the money and the funding. So thank you so much for letting me be a part of this, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Dottie. That's I think we can all agree there's just not enough research at all. So it's really exciting to see, you know, starting to build a bit of critical mass to get things moving. Okay, so let's move on to our next panelist, and I am delighted to welcome Adele to join us.
Hello, hello. Thank you very much for the invitation. My name is Adel Perez, he, him. And I'm really happy to be here for different reasons, but the first one, well, I want to start with the introduction. I'm a plant pathologist. That's how I'm related with microbiology. I work with disease of plants. I'm originally from Cuba. And my slide, I was thinking that I had movement, but it's I think it will work fine. And I like to always in my presentation talk about this movie because not many people knows how homophobic have been Cuba since the beginning in 1959 with the famous revolution. And if you want to know more, I highly recommend the movie Strawberry and Chocolate. So I'm from Cuba, I studied biochemistry. And it was always challenging because I was never in the closet. So everybody that asked me knew that I was gay, and that was really challenging. For a long time, I didn't disclose in the research environment about my sexual orientation because I had very negative response. But once I became a PI, I decided to be more open and try to advocate for the community. And this is how, long story short, Landon, Bruno, and we came together to organize Pride in Microbiology Network. I will not talk too much about it because Bruno and Landon will talk after, but this opened a new world for me, basically, because all this activity for advocating for the community made very clear that my lab was a friendly environment. And now I'm very lucky to have train or will train because people is coming to my lab, 10 a member of the LGBTQ plus community. So this is only in 4 years. I've been lucky. And I love working with members of the community, the same with a woman in STEM, because if you watch the White Lotus, one of the characters say, gays know how to do stuff. So if you want things well done, it will happen. But I think that being open about not only my lab, also my institution, have been attractive for members of the community to join my faculty that only had one openly gay in the history, two, and both have been in my department in the 50 years of my department. So now we are three in only 4 years since I joined the department. So things are changing slowly, but as you can see here in the bottom of my presentation, we still have a lot of things to do. We still get hate. For example, pride in microbiology, leader, you are a joke, or a pronoun in bio, don't talk. So things like that still happen, and we still have a lot of work to do.
Thanks, Adele. And yeah, sadly, we do have a lot of work to do. And, you know, it's depressing to kind of know that, you know, everybody kind of has to deal with those really negative comments whenever, you know, you make yourself visible. So thank you for sharing that experience. So you already kind of queued up our last two panelists. So I'm pleased to now invite to talk to us together Bruno and Landon.
Okay. Hello. Hi, folks. So I'm Bruno. I am an assistant professor of bacteriology at the Fluminense Federal University. I work with marine microbiology and bacterial genomics. And I will try to summarize briefly about the Pride Microbiology Network. Glad that Edo has already, you know, made an introduction. And just to shortly present myself, I have been involved since 2021 with the Queer in Micro working group that Ruby and Rowan are also part of. And we have been developing some initiatives to promote, champion LGBTQ plus microbiologists across the UK, mainly during the annual conference of the Microbiology Society. And later on, because of my work in the Queer Micro Working Group, I ended up being one of the co-founders and co-coordinators of the Pride Microbiology Network together with Landon and Edo. So our network was launched in June 2023, so 15 months already, I think. Has a perspective paper published in Nature Microbiology, which is open access. Everyone can take a look at it. Today we have 150 members worldwide, and we started with the plan to constitute a mentorship and community building initiative to enhance justice and the sense of belonging among LGBTQ plus microbiologists working in academia, industry, whichever the field they might be developing their work. Also, one of our goals is to spotlight queer and trans microbiologists, particularly their career paths and ongoing research work, even maybe starting collaboration, research collaboration. And actually, we are running bi-weekly coffee hours, and we had our first symposium in STEAM Day last week on Monday during the LGBTQ plus STEAM Day, which was great. A lot of attendees. We are really happy with that. And we do hope that you, if you don't know our network or if you're interested in getting in touch with us, just go to our website. We have a Discord channel which you can all subscribe, a newsletter. And we have just started it, just the three of us. Now we have other members who are actively collaborating, organizing the coffee hours, artwork, promoting on social media. And this is kind of helpful because we are like early career researchers, assistant professors, associate professors, postdoctoral researchers have a lot to do, but with their help, we are getting Pride in Micro ahead. So I think after this quite short introduction, I will step to Lando. Thank you for this, MII.
Great, thanks, Bruno. So I think my slides, I don't know if there is going to be movement or not moving through. I do have some animations, so we'll see how that goes. If they don't work, that's fine. But I think what I wanted to talk about was sort of the justification or reason why we wanted to start the Pride in Microbiology Network and why we sort of have pushed so hard to get this done. And I think really the large push here has been what people have talked about in terms of role models. And so when I talk about role models, I always like to talk about Henrik, because Henrik was a student that I worked with through the International Genetically Engineered Machine Conference. And Henrik wrote an article. If there are animations, now would be a good time to move forward. Okay, if there's not, that's fine. So Henrik had a article published with iGEM, and where he really pointed out that as a teenager, he sort of knew that he was a gay man, much like myself, but didn't know that he belonged in STEM spaces. I think both of us growing up in sort of the 90s, early 2000s, a lot of the gay representation we saw was not really science related or in sort of that area, and so we felt like maybe we didn't belong. And so Henrik outlines in this article a opportunity that he had to meet somebody, a gay man who worked at a botanical garden in Copenhagen, and how that really changed the trajectory of his life in terms of pursuing biology. And he now works with a company in Denmark. The other thing that I usually like to mention with these kinds of things is that in 2019, I had the opportunity to attend the LGBT Steminar that's held by LGBT STEM. These events are sort of standard scientific conferences, kind of like the symposium we ran last year, or just last week, sorry. And these events are meant to highlight queer and trans folks doing STEM. This particular event was held at the Institute of Physics in the UK, and this was sort of what we were greeted to when we first walked into the building. I like to point this out because I think this was sort of the first opportunity that I had to feel fully welcome in a scientific space, where there was sort of no worry about being judged or aggressive comments or uncomfortable situations. And it really also changed the way that I feel about science, and allowed me to recognize that not only do I belong, but these kinds of very comfortable, very profound experiences can exist for queer folks. And if there is the last slide, I think I just have one more. Or maybe two more. I did notice that actually, I'll just move on. I guess that's the idea, and the reason that we wanted to start Pride in Microbiology is really to sort of create the sense of belonging that others have spoken about today, to try to create an area for role models and for people to connect and to really enjoy science and do science as you are. And yeah, with that, maybe I'll stop, and I'm happy to answer any questions about our motivations or about the Pride in Microbiology Network. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bruno and London. And I have to say, I absolutely love that logo. I'd like it on a badge, thank you.
I think we would like to print stickers too. I think that's something we'd really like, but yeah, thank you.
Right, well, listen, thanks, folks in panel 2 there for some more fascinating insights. Just a reminder to folks to keep posting your questions in the Q&A. We will get to those. Lucky, I know you've most likely got a burning question, so I'm going to give you the chance to ask your question first.
Thank you, Claire. This is good. I like this. How can members of established professional organisations support and amplify the efforts of networks like the Pride in Microbiology Network?
I mean, I can start with perhaps an obvious and maybe self-serving suggestion. I think a lot of these networks and a lot of the things that we actually need are admin support and money. So I think in terms of running events and having the ability to do all of the things that we want to do, as Bruno mentioned, we're all early career researchers, and so we have a lot of things going on in the background already, and we do this as volunteers. And so having the ability to have somebody to offset some of that work is really, really helpful. And then providing the financial support for us to even host a Zoom webinar, which is what we did last week, to be able to pay for the subscription to do that. Those things are really important. So I think in terms of sort of potentially the easiest and most direct ways to support it, I think financial and admin support is really important.
Just to add up what Nando has just mentioned, I think happily we are having some scientific production in that direction as well. Last year, we published a perspective piece about building queer and trans inclusive microbiology conferences. This group we started, this first perspective piece kind of expanded during this year, and we have just published another piece in PLOS Biology about queer and trans inclusive, safer faculty hiring. So we are kind of, okay, if you want to see us and maybe turning academia in a more inclusive environment for queer and trans scientists, PIs, article researchers, particularly, you can read that. You have guidelines like published in high impact journals. So there is no way you just say, oh, this is too hard, you have to study or make some consultancy with EDI groups in the university, HR resources. No, you have like already guidelines for that. So it's easy. So I think another starting point is also maybe reading these pieces as well.
Thanks, Bruno. I'll just add something to this question, actually. Just take chair's privilege for a moment. One thing I notice about all of you, and it's kind of the same situation where there are other inequalities, that it's almost always the folks that experience the discrimination and the inequality that have to do the work to improve things and to try and get ourselves on a more equal footing. So, who have been your greatest non-queer allies that have helped you, and what can we all do to try and encourage more allies? Because we can't do this on our own, and we shouldn't have to do it on our own. So, what advice do you have for all of us to get our allies involved? Adele.
Yeah, for me have been the supervisors I had. Like I had one boss that he was gay, and he helped me a lot also to navigate. But my biggest ally have been people that are not part of the community, and it's just people that that is just open and they don't care. And when they know that you are gay or something, they just keep nothing change. Like it's people that the opposite. They include you and they treat you like like what we are, normal people. And that have been always amazing. Like also people that is not afraid about asking, oh, how is your husband? Or whatever they will ask to the straight co-workers, treat you exactly the same. You know, just be mindful and be I don't know, like include you in everything. So allies are really important because they are more than us. So we need that just be part of the society as anybody else. So I think that's important. And also an advice related with that, like Dukas was saying, and I hope I'm saying his name properly. If you are not part of one place like that, you should try to leave immediately. Do not try to succeed hiding yourself, because you will not succeed. You're already up for failure if you're in an environment like that, because they will not include you in all the little things that are important to develop your personal and your professional life. And I did, and nothing happened. I wasted a year of my life, but I gained a lot more when I was in a productive and inclusive environment.
I would also like to add, as an ally, that my whole life has been really supplemented in ways that I can't even imagine or describe well by the queer community, so much so that it has driven my research interest. And I feel like a big part of what's been really special about my research journey because of that has been trying to do what I do best, which is find gaps and fill them. And I think the real sort of selling point that I try to do with my research when I talk to people about it, and I try to tell everybody about this because I think it's really, really important. And that's why I try to go around as often as I can talking about it, is because what people don't realize is that it's not just about, trying to make people more visible. It's also about really objectively interesting science. Like, these are fascinating. Like, every question that has been asked needs to be re-asked when you introduce non-endogenous hormones into a body, and people deserve to have those answers, right? And so I think in a lot of ways, there are tons of barriers. Like, one of the comments that was in the chat that was directed towards me was, how can people get more involved? Like, how can this research get amplified? And there's so many barriers. As scientists, I think we aim for really clean, squeaky studies with hundreds of participants, but the population of non-binary folks is not high, especially not out, especially not on like formal hormones. And so I think there's a lot that literally scares people out of doing this kind of science. And so, like, as an ally, I also really try to focus on highlighting barriers and trying to help people realize that those gaps are worth filling, not just because it's literally helping people and doing what science is actually about, which is filling gaps in knowledge that actually is applicable towards making people's lives better, but it's also giving people the visibility that they deserve. Like, how much money gets put into breast cancer research, and that's it. And because it's such a visible thing, people understand that it's important. Like, people don't understand how important it is to be able to see research happen, because that validates that it matters. So I think as an ally, just really reminding people that, again, the research is fascinating. It's so interesting, and every question is open to them. So I think also reminding people that, from a scientific perspective, it's a wide open field. Like, you can be a grandfather in this field if you want to, and I think that angle really appeals to people as well.
Yeah, thanks, Toti. So how would trans folks get more involved in those kind of studies?
Great question. Yeah. So a lot of the places that are doing these kinds of studies are places that have very active trans health centers. So you're going to see a lot of that. Places like University of San Francisco area, University of San Diego, anywhere that has like an already established trans health clinic that's probably also on its way to transitioning towards a full department. I don't think there's any departments anywhere in the country here, but we're in the process of making a transgender specific medical department. So there's also structures that are being built at literally as we speak. So I think making sure that people find clinics and local LGBTQ centers, because our way to reach out to the community is through established centers. So I think that also goes towards like why these networks are so important, right? It's not just about community, it's also about being able to connect potential patients for studies that can also filter into the research.
Yeah, thanks, Dottie. Adele, there's a question directed at you actually in relation to the studies that you spoke about. You mentioned there were only 3 to 5 studies worldwide. So how do you think you see that increasing?
I think that was not for me. I think that was for Dottie because I didn't talk about any study.
Oh,
Okay, I can also.
He said my name, I know, but
I feel like
I
it's
feel
taking
like
up plenty of space. So if someone else has a question, I'm just an ally. Like I'm just here to be background character.
I would like to answer the question from Dukas if possible. Was mentioning if I think that having this space and constructing the network can help people to come out. And I definitely think so, because I've been, and this break my heart, but sometimes I get contacted by students or few possible students from African countries that are illegal being gay, literally. And they tell me, you know, I would love to go to your lab because I'm gay or I'm part of the LGBT community. And I feel like you have such a inclusive space that I can be myself. Sometimes works, sometimes doesn't work because the profile is not, and still, you know, we are bound to grants, but I always try to at least take the time to suggest some places that they could go based on their profile, because I cannot be just like, no, you know, but all these students, they cannot be themselves in their countries or in their community. And luckily, many of them, and I feel, and I still get in contact through social media with many of them, and I know they are now out of the country, some of them, and trying to well, they are out now, so I'm happy about it. But yeah, having spaces like this. Also, I have some trainees that they always hide who their true self in previous places, and now they are comfortable because also I know this is the other thing. I'm not this saying that I have gay people and I'm just speculating. Is because we have to disclose that we are part of the community, and they felt comfortable enough to disclose not only with me but also with the full lab. Like in the lab meeting, we talk about, some trainees are like, oh, I'm going to get a Canadian husband to stay in Canada, like joke like that. Coming from a gay guy in a full lab full of different nationalities, where we have Muslim, we have every religion you can imagine. So I feel like we are doing something good, and this is the place that I want to be. So yes, the short answer is yes.
If I can maybe briefly add to what Adela said, in 2020, it was pre-pandemic, it was in January, we held a similar event to the LGBT seminar in Nova Scotia where I did my PhD. And it was sort of based on that. I took my experiences there and ran an event locally. And we actually did have a student who started their talk by saying, sorry, I just got out of the car with my grandmother. I just came out to her and told her that I was giving this talk at this meeting. And so I think like direct evidence there that this is absolutely what happens. You know, you create spaces for people to be open in themselves in a professional context. And I think it allows them to feel a lot safer, knowing that they have communities and networks of people to work with. It gives them that safety net to be able to say like, yeah, I think it's probably time. So yes, I think absolutely that is happening.
Thanks, Landon and Adele, for your insights there. At this point, I'm going to invite all of the other panelists back. So folks from panel 1, please magically reappear on our screens. Wonderful. And folks, please feel free to continue asking questions. We've got everybody here now, so we can get lots of different insights. To get us going, I've got a question for Nicholas. What advice would you give to others that would like to kickstart Pride events for visibility and engagement?
That is a great question. Okay, what would I give? Well, if the Pride events coincide with the city or the place that you live, then it's always good to get in touch with the organizers, because they may have resources that can help you to either be a part of the parade or to help, with decorations and stuff like that. They may even have networks that you can tap into to help with for example, just getting ready for the event. However, if it's not coinciding with a specific city or just wherever you live, I would definitely say that there's loads of resources online where people just kind of give their, I guess, best practice on how to run an event. But the first thing I would always do is a call out. You never know how many other people at your organization would love to possibly be running an event like that. And so just getting together to ask the community, that's always the first step.
Fantastic, thanks, Nicholas. So excuse me 1 second, I have to. Right. Okie dokie. I've got like hundreds of questions, to be honest, so I might just let's get stuck in. If you could, let's say how to phrase it. What advice, based on where you are now, what advice would you give to your younger self? Say you 10 years ago.
Just ignore what other people think. Like, doesn't care. Like, really, just be yourself.
Well,
yeah, I agree. I was going to say I agree, because I mean, just being yourself, and then you find your people when you are your authentic self, and it's the best thing. So don't be scared, and just do it. That's what I'd say.
But I suppose the thing, do you think yourself 10 years ago you would have been able to do that? Because I mean, I look at myself, so I'm like a little bit older than all of you, and I'm definitely at that stage in my life where I don't care what anybody thinks, and I kind of have that kind of privilege to occupy a space where I don't. If somebody doesn't like me, oh, here's my cat. Sorry.
I think yes, 10 years ago I would still follow that advice. Maybe not 20, but 10 years. I'm a little bit older probably than many in the panel. But but I learned that since I was in university. I always say this anecdote, because when I tried to find my first supervisor, we didn't click, he didn't pick me, and it was okay. And I learned many years later that it was because I looked too gay for him. So, and apparently every time he saw me in the institute, because at the end I stayed in the same institute, he joked about it or something, but my friends guard me from all that for many years. And I think that that's an important advice. You need to surround yourself from people that from people that really don't judge you and try to protect you from those things. And in that, when they told me years after we graduated and they told me the story, imagine 4 years not talking about it. When I learned that I learned one thing, like, I don't care what people say about me. Like, it's not going to affect me, but it's not going to affect me even more if I don't even know. And that has been my, when now I have some students that want to come and say something about other group or some other PI saying something, I'm like, if it's important, they will come and tell me on my face. And that's my motto right now for life. If I don't know it, I don't care.
I kind of agree with Adele, and thanks for the answers previously. But I think that we are more and more in this position the further we are in the career. The further we are in the career, the more stable we feel and the more weight we have. So it's easy to say, you know what, I don't care, because in fact, we have this privilege not to care. We, especially of maybe some critique from the authorities, but even that, I think that would be taken badly by the whole community of the university, at least in my institution. But I'm thinking about the young students and the question that we had in the chat, the question which is quite sad because the person doesn't even know if the person wants to be belongs to even to the community of LGBT. So that means that we still have this big insecurity of being judged both by regular people, but also by the community. And it's a question of belonging. And I think that maybe just having networks and, like Adele said, being an example and showing that it's possible through personal contact, through accessibility, we can help people find their way and find their comfort zone. But I totally agree that this, it's easy to say that retrospectively, that we are now, respected.
Thanks, Dukas. I have to apologize. I'm trying to keep my cat off the screen with one hand. Okay, well, I just got a pretty serious question here. And Adele, I think you indicated you'd like to answer this one. What advice would you give someone whose supervisor is homophobic?
Yeah, if he's homophobic to you, I think you should leave. I know it sounds difficult. I know it's complicated, but I heard stories so horrible that one, if you stay, you might finish your degree, but you might end up hating academia and hating everything, and that will mark you for so long. I have stories of people like staying, because it's a good lab, or because I'm international, or, well, number one, try to find some ally, try to find somebody that supports you. And just try to move. Maybe you can move inside the institution. Maybe you can move inside the country. I don't know, but I would leave. And I left a lab like that. I was all the time. He didn't know I was gay, so he was all the time making homophobic jokes, all the time making misogynistic jokes. It was horrible. They were like 3 guys, him and a postdoc and a PhD student and me. And I was like, I'm done with this. And after a year, because I was in another country, it was not even my own country, and I didn't want to go back to my country, I slowly started talking to my other students in the program and trying to find who would be a good fit for me among the supervisors. And one of the students said, you know what, talk to my supervisor. He's really nice. He's also a plant pathologist. I'm sure he will support you. And I did like that. And I moved. I wasted a year, but I gained so much because with this new supervisor, I was happy. I was doing what I wanted. Everybody was super friendly, and it was a really welcoming environment. And even when I had personal problems, later, he was my only supporter. So you are not only gaining a supervisor, you are gaining a friend, you are gaining somebody that will help you for a long time. So that's always my advice. It's hard to do, but in the long term, it's better because I've seen students with mental health issues after being years in an environment like that, hating academia, not knowing what to do. So I always say quit.
Thanks, Adele. It's yeah.
Claire, if I can offer a reflection.
Yeah, please do.
I was thinking a bit about what Adele said too about being open to yourself and some of the conversations we've been having. And I do wonder about, sort of choosing to be open about your identity has sort of the added benefit that the people who do think poorly of you because of that will think poorly of you because of that, and probably won't select you to be a PhD student or a postdoc or something of that kind. And so in some ways, there's a bit of confidence that comes with that by being who you are. You put into the world sort of a call out for people who will accept you and want you to be in those spaces. And so, I mean, it's a very personal decision, and it's something that comes down to a number of factors, and it's not simply professional. But I think, if you can be open with yourself and have that confidence, I think it does a lot of good, and in some cases can help you maybe avoid some of these really harmful and awful situations.
Thanks, Landon. Yeah, I think, that's really, really great advice as well. Because it's so important to take care of yourself. And that's something that we have to remind ourselves to do sometimes. Maybe folks are really interested to know more about your photography and your microbiology. Can you tell us a little bit more?
Yeah, so I mean, I got into photography after I finished my PhD. I basically had a bit of burnout, so had some sick leave, which I'm not afraid to talk about because I think a lot of people actually go through that in academia. And I decided to pick up a hobby because I was working too much, right? So I just, took my camera to the events I was going to anyway, and then fast forward like 4 years, I'm now getting booked out to take photographs at these events, which are all like drag and cabaret, and it's like just brilliant, very queer, very fun. And then I started making these conversations with people like, after the events, and was put in contact with these local artists who use sort of this bridge between microbiology and queer performers and queer art. So I put a link in the answer to in the chat to the calendar that these guys produced in 2021 during lockdown, which was actually funded by the Microbiology Society and the Arts Council. And it was brilliant. It actually made my 2021 so much better because each month there was like a different microbe, but like a drag queen, and it was great. But anyway, so I'm now working with these people on this project, which is going to be addressing the water crisis that we have in the UK with all of the polluted water. And we're hoping to sort of tell this story about contaminated water and what that means in society, and other stuff through drag. So we're going to have a drag queen walking around areas in Liverpool where are really important for public health. And so I've got to, as a scientist and also a creative, work with them to get their science up to scratch, but they're going to work with me to get their performance. So we're going to have this working relationship with each other to have that sort of public engagement. So I'm really excited that the world has put me here because I think it is really innovative to sort of have that come from artists rather than scientists, and it's sort of working the other way around, because I think we do a lot of public engagement as scientists to get to wider communities, but I just think this is really, really great. So hopefully watch this space. We are waiting for funding at the moment, so fingers are crossed, but that's going to be fun.
That sounds totally awesome. So definitely fingers
quite awesome.
Fingers crossed for you. I look forward to seeing that come to fruition. Bruno, London, what are your plans for the Pride Network over the next few years, and do you envisage face-to-face events?
We have a lot of plans, but we have to get funding for those plans. Anyway, we want to keep the coffee hours because they have been quite productive. Our virtual events as well, because sometimes it's easier for folks to get connected worldwide. We are really happy. We were really happy with our last symposium on STEAM Day. And right now, maybe capillarity through the academic societies, getting ourselves kind of spotlighted, our work, because, you know, it's for researchers, academia, but also people outside from it. So maybe initially through the, academic societies as well. And we are have been really lucky in that sense, in that direction, because ASM, the Microbiology Society as well. So we have these spaces to get our network also highlighted. I think Landon can maybe continue with other plans.
Sure.
I try to be really on earth, like not dreaming so much.
Oh, good. I think the other big thing that we're hoping to launch really soon is like a more directed mentorship program. So I know a lot of the programming we've had so far has been very informal. We've been trying to sort of build this thing organically, and it's worked so far. But I think it would be nice to have sort of a way for us to connect more senior people in the community to more junior people and actually create sort of a directed mentorship program. So that's probably the closest thing on the horizon to actually getting launched. And I think the other thing, people might be familiar with like 500 Queer Scientists, which has done profiles on a number of queer scientists. We're hoping to do something very similar, to be able to profile members of our community and the work that they're doing, and sort of essentially creating a database of faces, so that people know that there's lots of us out here, and it's maybe easier to find us if you want to. So yeah, I think that pretty much sums up what our major plans are. I mean, we've got big pie in the sky ideas, but I maybe won't share those yet. You'll hear about them soon, I'm sure.
I just learned, it is something random, that the founder of 500 Queer Scientists is an entomologist, and I know them at the entomology conference a few weeks ago. So it was a random fact. They have a really strong community also in the entomology world that I'm connecting through microbes.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And yeah, exciting to hear that you've got some big plans for the Pride in Microbiology Network. I mean, please sign me up to be a mentor. I'd be happy to get involved. Okay, we've only got a few minutes left. I've got a couple of things I still want to ask. I'm going to ask a question here. Do you think there are more issues around homophobia in an academic environment than in a clinical environment, based on your experiences? The person that put the question here has said that they work in a clinical path lab and have mandatory training about EDI and various policies and procedures, and that the EDI is more woven through the work that they do. But I guess things are not quite as stringent in academia. So what are your experiences? Bowen.
So I think from my experience working in academia, but clinical adjacent, working in a lot of clinical labs, I think I haven't experienced much difference between them, because I would say that EDI training can only go so far, and I mean, a homophobic person can still do EDI training and still be homophobic. I think the major place where I experience homophobia and transphobia has been actually the clinical setting itself with patients. I think patients are the real drivers of that negativity at the moment, in certainly my experience. But I wouldn't say I've noticed a big difference between academia and the clinical environment. But I would say that that is a UK-based answer, so your mileage may vary.
So any insights
Yes.
from other countries? Go on, Bruno.
I was going to mention that, Claire, it depends also where the person is based, where, because, for instance, here in Brazil, when we compare maybe academia and clinical environments, I would say that academia is safer. But depending on the political environment, things that are happening, maybe this can change even in academia. So I say that it is a horrible thing to say, but I'm quite used to microaggressions by my colleagues. So people who you expect are progressive and are more open-minded, but it's kind of daily. And okay, it's theoretically a safer environment, but I'm also suffering with homophobia. And anyway, it's tricky to kind of define which is maybe we are going to suffer that.
Thanks, Bruno. Okay, we've got about 4 minutes left. So I'm gonna just pose the last question from the Q&A. So the questioner said, I did not expect to feel so emotional from what you've all shared. So first of all, thank you to everybody. I feel very seen. So what does it mean to you as individuals that you have such an impact on your community? So I'm going to ask each of you for a very brief 30-second reflection. Okay? Everybody's like, oh. So I'm going to start. I'm just going to pick somebody random to start with. So let's go with Dottie, because you're nodding.
That was my trick. I was gonna do that to make you look at me. So again, I am an ally, and I also just want to say I quadruple checked with Lucky that it would be okay if I was even part of this, because I didn't want to take up someone's spot that had more to say and it was more relevant. But I think all allies can connect with is empathy, and I think experiences like this, especially specifically in STEM settings, is really important because it's really different out in the world. Like out in the world, I'll just tell anyone anything. Like if I hear someone say something, that I don't think is okay to one of my queer friends, I'll just say something. But it's so different when you have to think about your career and you have to think about your friend's career and remembering that, there aren't well-defined ways to in the moment stand up for people, even if that's what you truly want. And so although there will probably always be times where the right words won't be there at the right moment, being here feels like I'm building some of the same tools, and just like deep profound thank you for continuing to be your most authentic selves. It's so inspiring. And yes, I also feel very emotional, so thank you for letting me be here.
Thanks, Dottie. Nicholas, a quick reflection.
Yeah, I would say it's a privilege to to be told that I'm creating an impact. But I think it also makes me want to continue doing the things that I'm doing. Because I'm doing it for the people that are in this room now, but also those that aren't and who will come up in further generations, and continue to plant seeds, I think. Yeah.
Thanks, Nicholas. And okay, we've only got about a minute left, so just one more quick reflection. Who's got a burning reflection to share?
I can go really quick.
Oh,
Yeah.
Go on then, Hidel, go on.
No, for me, sometimes we think that to make an impact, we need to make a huge discovery or something big. But sometimes the biggest impact is small and very localized. And for me, if I can keep in academia or industry and just help advance the career of 5 people, I'm happy with that.
Thanks,
That's it.
Hidel. I agree. I agree. Right, folks, we've actually come to the end of the time, but don't run away just yet. Listen, thank you, all of our panelists, for sharing. You know, I don't know what to say, to be honest. It's just amazing to hear you all just be your authentic selves and really share your experiences. And I hope that the folks that have joined us today feel inspired, and I really hope that everybody feels encouraged to connect with each other. That's part of why we're here. We want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to connect. So don't be shy. Get in touch with everybody. And before we finish, I just want to quickly check in with Drew to see where you are, Drew, and do you have something that you can quickly share with us?
Hi, yes, I've been I've been writing down as much as I can, taking nice notes, and doing some base drawings for the graphic harvest. So I'll show you what I've done, and I'll kind of just very quickly just tell you what the theme for it is. But so I don't know if you can see this. The light's it's not the best in here. But basically, I have these threads that are being woven here, and I want them to continue around the whole harvest, kind of catching different things that people have said and just tying it all together so everybody is connected within the theme. And it's through this DNA thread that I've kind of developed at the bottom there. So, but I'll send photographs of it so you can see it clearer. But yeah, I've got lots to do. I've got lots of great notes, and it's very, very inspiring, very inspiring.
Right, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Drew. So remember, everybody, to come check back, and we'll see the finished piece of work from Drew in due course. Let's say we'll not put pressure on you for a specific date. So listen, thanks everybody for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed the discussion, and thank you so much for all of your questions. As we said, let's continue to connect. We can continue to inspire each other and, you know, be wonderful advocates for a really inclusive microbiology community. So on that note, I'm going to close the webinar and wish you all a wonderful rest of your day. So thank you so much, and hope to see you again.